guys, I hope y'all are doing well. Today we're going to go over the topic of, was God morally just in the Old Testament? Were his judgments of on certain tribes in the land of Canaan morally right? Okay? And we're going to focus today mainly on the Amalekites. Did God command genocide? Okay? There is a lot of misinformation out there regarding this topic, and it's one of the atheists' favorite topics to bring up. You know, God was morally repugnant to, how could he ever command a genocide on a people? Well, this is probably going to at least be a two-part series, probably a three. So we're going to get more into God's specific wording in the next video. But today we're just going to focus on, did God command a genocide against the Amalekites? Okay? Now, we're going to start in Genesis 14:7. This is back during, the days of Abraham, okay? And they returned, Genesis 14:7, and they returned and came to in Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hezron Tamar. Okay, so the Amalekites and the Amorites are in a very similar geographical area. They're kind of grouped together as nations, very like neighboring nations, okay? Or neighboring tribes, to be more specific. Now let's go to Genesis 15:13 through 16. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them. That's the Israelites in Egypt, when they're going to be slaves. And they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation, Egypt, whom they shall serve, will I judge. Afterward shall they come out with a great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither, okay, into the land of Israel, again. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Wait a minute. Now that's interesting. Okay? So God's going to plant his people in Canaan, okay? Now this is Canaan. The land of Canaan is full of different tribes. The Amorites, we're going to cover some more of these tribes in just a minute. So there's a bunch of different tribes living in Canaan. Now the Amorites, it mentions here specifically, but I want you to remember the Amorites and the Amalekites are kind of this neighboring nations, okay? So they're all in this very big or large geographical area, and they're all really, really, really bad and corrupt. They're all very, very sinful and do some pretty terrible things like human sacrifice, child sacrifice, raping and killing children, horrible, evil things, okay? These are not nice people that just got accidentally caught up into something. This is bad culture, okay? But the thing here is, it says, for the Amorites, the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So in other words, over 400 years, God gives these people to repent. He gives them 400 years while Israel is over in captivity in Egypt to get their act together. Over 400 years. And they refuse. Now God knows what's going to happen, but he doesn't judge them at that very moment. He still gives them the opportunity to turn. Now why is this important? Because it shows something about God's character. It shows something about God's character we're going to find out more about. Okay? So how does God judge certain nations? Okay? How does he dish out his justice? Okay, let's go to Genesis 18:23 through 24. And Abraham drew near and said, that this is about Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? We all know the story about Sodom and Gomorrah, so I don't have to cover much of it here. But listen to this interaction between God and Abraham. Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure they be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? Now this is going to come, we're going to skip down to verse 32. Because they have this exchange, God and Abraham are speaking to one another. And it comes all the way down to 10. And he said, oh, let not the Lord be angry. And I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10, just 10 people, 10 decent people shall be found there. And he said, God said, what did he say? I will not destroy it for 10 people's sake. So in other words, God will not utterly wipe out a people if just 10 are there. 10 righteous people are there. He will not totally wipe out a nation. So that goes to show you something of what's going on in Genesis 15 when he says the Amorites' iniquity is not full yet. So in other words, there were still some decent-ish people living among the whole land of Canaan, okay? Their culture had not degraded into the point of just total and evil depravity that is beyond saving, okay? But something I want to ask you is, well, before I do it, let's go back to Genesis. Let's look at some of the tribes, then I'll ask the question. So Genesis 15, 19 through 21. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, and the Kadamites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Raphaites, I'm butchering those names, so forgive me, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. These are all these nations, or these tribes that are living in Israel that are going to be, that currently possess the land, but God is going to eventually judge and put Israel in that land, plant them within it. Are these tribes beyond saving? Can any of them, do they even have a chance at being spared God's wrath? Do they have a shot at this? Well, we already know that God is willing to wait for 400 years for them to be able to turn. 400 years. But let's say that throughout that time period, that they're just like the other terrible cultures around them, and they're all horrible. We're going to look at something very interesting. Remember the name the Kenites, okay? So now we know from Numbers 13:29. I won't flip there for the sake of time. That the Amalekites were living more or less in the Negev region between Israel and Egypt. Okay, it's a very desert region, and they were probably a more nomadic people. In other words, they were constantly tribes warring against one another, warring, because they were in the desert. That's not a really big place where you're going to have a lot of cities in during this time period. Okay. Now Exodus 17:8. Now let's find out what happens right when the Israel comes out of Egypt. What are the Amalekites doing? Are they just being good neighborly people? Well, let's find out. In Exodus 17:8, then came Amalek, that's the king of the Amalekites, and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Israel had literally just come out of Egypt. They had their women, children, old, young, all this people wandering in the wilderness. They've just come out of Egypt. They're not looking for a fight, okay? And they're in the desert. This is not a place you want to have big battles and stuff right now. They had just came out of bondage from Egypt. And right when they come out of bondage, the Amalekites attack them. So let's look at Deuteronomy 25:17-18. So right after they come out of Egypt, the Amalekites try to destroy them. So let's go to Deuteronomy 25:17-18. Now this is a little bit later on after that event. And this is when Israel is going to have to fight with them again. Remember what Amalek did unto thee, by the way, when ye were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way, and smote the hindmost, in other words, those that were in the back, the rear of the tribe of Israel as they were wandering, hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, even when thou was faint and weary, and he feared not God. So this guy was literally attacking those that were straggling behind the column of the Israelites. He's killing the old, the weak, the sick, the feeble, the children. That's who this guy's attacking. These are not nice people. Okay? They were pretty much raiders. If you wanted a generalized term, you could call them land pirates, because that's kind of what they were. Okay? Now let's go to Judges 6:3-4. And so it was, when Israel had sown, now this is when Israel had come into the land, okay? They were now in the land of Canaan in Israel, okay? Now they're starting to sow crops, raise livestock, and settle down. Now watch what happened. And so it was, when Israel had sown, that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites, and the children of the east, when they came up against them, and they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth. That's the crops. Till thou came unto Gaza, and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor oxen, nor ass. So the daggone Amalekites were sitting there killing or raiding Israel, killing a lot of people, and they were destroying their crops. You don't destroy the crops of a people for war booty. You destroy the crops of a people to make them starve, to kill them by starvation. And guess who that affects? Everyone. It affects the children, the women, everybody, the men, everything, the old. So that's what they were doing. These people were raiders, constantly attacking and destroying all those the weakest among Israel. So now let's go to the passage that is in question. The passage that all the atheists love to quote to try to down God for being more for his justice, okay? So 1 Samuel 15, 2-3. Now this is when Saul has come along. Now the people of Israel had cried out for a king. Now they've got King Saul, the first king. Okay? Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way, and when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, and infant and suckling, ox, sheep, and camel, and ass. Okay, so this one is the passage that people think is being ordered a genocide. It sounds pretty dang terrible on its face. If you take and just read that right there and nothing else, you say, dude, that's God's ordering a genocide of a lot of people. But that's the problem. We have an entire Bible to look for and to understand. We don't take just that verse and say that that's a genocide. We need to learn more about it. And we need to learn more about the ancient Near East and their ways they used language. That's going to be in the next video, so please stay tuned for that, because that's going to be very important. And why this video, we're going to see something very interesting, okay? So, obviously that means, you know, most people will say that's a genocide. He's ordering everybody to be wiped out. Well, let's see what happens. Let's go to verse 5-6. And Saul came to a city of Amalek, and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said unto the Kenites, Go and depart, get you down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For ye showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. Do you remember the tribes that we spoke about in Genesis 15? All those tribes were even after 400 years, God was still willing to spare them if they showed mercy. The Kenites were only spared because they showed mercy. They were willing to repent and saw, okay, these people are trying to get out of Egypt. They've just come out of bondage, and they were willing to show mercy to the tribes of Israel. The Amalekites were not. So even after 400 years of evil and depravity, the people of the Kenites could still be saved. They were still merciful to them. So, let's go next to 7-8. And Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until they all comest to Sur, that is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. Okay, so Saul was supposed to kill everybody, kill the whole darn everybody there. But he doesn't do that. He ends up sparing the king, only the king, and a bunch of the livestock. So that's a big mistake he's made, okay, because we're going to find out in verse 32 through 33. Then said Samuel, Bring ye hither to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came unto him delicately. And Agag said, Surely the bitterness of death is past. And Samuel said, As thy sword hath made women childless, so shall thy mother be childless among women. And Samuel hewed Agag into pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. That may be graphic, but dude, he had literally been doing the same thing to all these other people. That's not unjust. That's justice. This guy was evil. He was doing evil things. Justice got him. Okay? And even notice something. So, before we continue, is this a genocide? You can even notice something right here in just this verse. Samuel said, as thy sword hath made women childless, so shall thy mother be childless. I thought that all the Amalekites, every single one of them, were wiped out right then, except for Agag, and then he's gone. I thought they were all wiped out. Genocide. God commanded a genocide, and they're all gone. Well, you even see in that verse, there's a hint that that's not the case. Okay, so let's just say that God killed all of them. Was God morally right to do it if that is the case? Yes, God is morally right to destroy a totally corrupt nation if they are totally corrupt and beyond saving. And some cultures refuse to repent. I'm sorry, but that's true. These guys were not much better than terrorists that we say today, if not probably worse, because I think these guys were sacrificing their own children to idols. They would put the baby on these bronze hands of an idol and set the fire, put a fire below it and make the idol super hot, and it would melt the child as it sat upon it. And they would play these loud drums to drown out the sound of the children screaming so the parents couldn't hear it. That's how bad these people were. So even if God decided to just wipe out this entire nation, that is just. These people were bad. They needed to get gone. But let's see what God really did. Let's look a little further. Did God commit a genocide? In the same book, 1 Samuel 30, let's read verse 1. It came to pass when David, so now King David's, he ain't king yet, but David is around, and his men would come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire. So this is where King David is actually running from Saul, and he is in the, kind of near the Philistine area. And guess what? The Amalekites are still there. They're running around, pillaging, and they steal all of David's wives and stuff. So David has to go track them down. So let's go to verse 13. And David said unto him, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, okay. At verse 13. Now this is after David had went and saved his wives, saved the wives and the children and stuff from the Amalekites who were still around. Okay? Now this in verse 13 is about a battle that took place, and a messenger comes to David to tell him that Saul is dead. Now who is this messenger? Verse 13, and David said unto him, to whom belongest thou, and whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant of who? An Amalekite. And my master left me, because 3 days ago I fell sick. I'm sorry, that right there was when they were tracking the Amalekites that stole the wives of David. My apologies. We're going to get to the part about Saul next. So let's go to 2 Samuel 1, 3, and then verse 8. And David said unto, this is the messenger about King Saul, a battle that took place. I'm sorry about that. And David said unto him, from whence comest thou? And he said unto him, out of the camp of Israel, and I escaped. So this dude was with Israel. Who was this guy? Let's look at verse 8. And he said unto me, who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. This dude was an Amalekite fighting, in this instance, was fighting with the Israelites. I thought all the Amalekites were dead. Something is not adding up here for a genocide. Okay? So let's go read to verse 10. So this is about King Saul. King Saul has been struck and he's in pain, and he calls to this guy, this Amalekite. And he said unto me, stand, I pray thee, upon me, and slay me, for anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him, and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and brought them hither unto my Lord. So this dude, Saul, the one who supposedly killed all the Amalekites, was killed by an Amalekite. That's ironic. And so after that, this dude goes and finds David to report to him the news. So surely, there can't be many Amalekites left. Well, let's go to 1 Chronicles 4, 43. And they smote the rest of the Amalekites that were escaped and dwelt there unto this day. That's during the time of the kings. That's after Israel's kingship after Saul. So the Amalekites were still around. Let's go look even further. Surely that means they're gone. Let's look in the book of Esther, chapter 3, verse 1. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. And guess what Agagite was? Guess what Agag was? He was the king of the Amalekites. And advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. So even after Israel had been exiled into Persia, into Assyria, during the Persian kings, the Amalekites still had people around. So there's something that we're going to have to look at in the next video about what God is speaking about. What does the terminology God uses in Samuel 15? Is he literally saying, go and genocide a people, or is there something more at play? So even now, we can see that all the way from Samuel, so that's way before the kings of Israel, before they were kings, to the time of the Persian Empire, there were still Amalekites. God did not command a genocide of the Amalekites. You see, that's like almost 1,000 years difference. So, no, God did not command a genocide against the Amalekites. Now, we're going to get into more tomorrow about what is the terminology being used here. And we need to understand more about ancient Near Eastern cultures to be able to fully grasp what God is saying. So, until we get to there, I want to say one more thing before we go. A lot of people say, well, why would for God to pour out justice like that, or to kill people, that's totally evil. That's horrible to do. That ain't righteous. The wages of sin is death. God is all righteous. Okay? God is a righteous being. To be unrighteous requires a penalty. The wages of sin is death. Is God unrighteous to judge sin? No, he is not. But God is so loving and so merciful that he himself was willing to bear the wrath of death on a cross so that we could be shown mercy, so that we could be forgiven and escape that wrath. God endured his own wrath so that we didn't have to. So don't tell me that God is unjust. God is so loving that he was willing to leave heaven to bear the wrath that we deserve so that we could be saved. So I really appreciate y'all listening. I hope this was edifying. And stay tuned. We'll have a new video out soon. I'll catch y'all next time. God bless.